Hey everybody, it's Heather Gillis. I am so sorry for the technical difficulties. I really apologize. I don't really know what happened. I just kept getting a camera error, and then when I switched over to my Periscope, then there was something wrong with my sound, so it just wasn't meant to be, and I really apologize. I've done that before, and I don't know, I didn't have that much trouble before, but I was really looking forward to it, but I'll figure it out before next week, and we will get together and do this again. But from now, you guys do have your study guides, so just do your Be Still chapters this week. And I'm just recording this video it was just more for an introduction. I was just going to tell you a little bit about my testimony, and for most of you, it's so good to know most of you who are on this study. I know a lot of your backstories, and I'm just so grateful and thankful that you're here and that we could all come together. So hopefully next week it will be more that we can get together and have a discussion and answer those questions for the Be Still. But next week, definitely have your Bibles and your study guide to go along with next week's lesson. But I was going to announce the winner that we had from the Victorious Life, the elements of victory that are on the Victorious Life book on the front cover. So you are a lucky winner. You're going to get a mustard seed. So I make these little things that has a little trinket, and inside is a mustard seed, and that's what this study is all about. If you have faith the size of the mustard seed, you will be able to move mountains. So this is just a little tangible reminder, and the winner is Jessica McCall. She was the first one to answer. There was actually 5 elements of faith that I had on there, but I had only asked you guys to do 3. So the one element was the gold foil, gold for winning a gold medal. The crown that you have on there, that's actually called a crown of isthmus, and that is the crown that the Corinthians would be crowned when they won their races. These are the crowns that they wore on their heads as depicting that they won the race instead of wearing gold medals. Like nowadays, we Olympians, they wear gold medals, but for back in the day, their medals were these wreaths, these crowns that indicated a victory that you won. The other element was light. Now you can see on these pictures the Vulcan lights, and down there was light, and that's an element of victory. The word victorious is an element of victory, and you guys were on it. The growth is victory. That is a sign of victory. So there was actually 5 elements. So congratulations to Jessica. Great job for answering, great answers, and thanks for participating. What else? So you should have gotten your PDF file by now and printed out everything, and your prayer cards and bookmark and the schedule. So there's a lot, and I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be jam-packed, but I'm looking forward to getting through this study with everybody. But I'm going to go ahead and get started on just for your study guide. There's just 3 things that I had written down about my testimony, and you can just pretty much listen to this one. The next ones will be more of an interaction where we write down. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started. But for most of you know me, but maybe some of you don't know all of my story. But I'm just going to start back from when I was a little girl, and I'm trying to keep this short, like less than 15-20 minutes. So I'm going to start back from, there's not a really time that I have not known Jesus. I accepted Jesus as a little girl at a very young age. In fact, my parents, when I was young, they were divorced when I was a very young age, at the age of 2. My father, before he got married, he was not a believer, and he married my mother, who was pregnant, and he had grown up in a in a Christian home, but he did not know Jesus. And it was through my the pregnancy of my sister and I that my dad came to know who Jesus was. So he married my mother, and when we were born, it became very apparent that he was not going to be able to stay married to my mother. She had a mental illness, and she battled a lot with addictions and depression, and it was not a safe environment for us to be living in. And so my father knew that he had to get us out of there. So he started praying to God, and he made a deal with God, and he had filed for divorce and for custody of my sister and I. And he made a deal with God, and he said, God, if you give me custody of these two girls, I will forever dedicate my life to you. Well, you know what happened. God came through with his deal, and my dad had to come through with his deal. And forever, from that point on, my father had accepted Jesus as his Savior, and from that point on had dedicated every single part of his life to God. And that forever has changed my life and why I was exposed to Jesus at such a young age, because of my father. Now, growing up, we lived in a home where we lived with my father, my sister, and I, but we grew up in a Protestant home. But then on the weekends, we went to go visit our mother. And she actually was of Mormon faith. So when we would go to visit her, we would actually go to her church, the Mormon church. And we were with our father, we would go with him to the Presbyterian church. So growing up, you can only, and then when we went to school, my sister and I, we went to a Baptist school. So you can only imagine growing up how all the different levels of faith, how as a child you start to recognize all the differences. So when I was in school, in the Baptist school, it was great. We went to chapel, we sang songs, we learned scripture, and you grew up to have this childlike faith. Well, I started to learn very early that way when I was in school, it was very, they practiced corporal punishment. So if you talked in the bathroom, in the hallway, you got spanked with the wooden paddle. And that's just how it was in the 1980s. And you know what? I got spanked a lot. And because I talked a lot. And, that's what I learned. I learned that it wasn't fear of the Lord, it was fear of the paddle. And, I learned, is this what it means to have a relationship with God, just to be spanked all the time with this paddle? Because I was never even punished that way in my own home by my own father. In my own home with my father, it was very loving, and I started to recognize the difference about what a relationship was with a father, and it was very loving. And my father very much portrayed what a relationship is with God. Now, when I went home on the weekends to visit my mother in the Mormon faith, it was very different. When we went to that church, nobody could tell me anything. I would ask questions, and they would just invite the Mormon missionaries over, and no one really could answer my questions. I would ask questions, but no one really answered them, like in a way that was an answer to me. So, but whenever I asked a question to my father, he would always open the Bible and refer to the Bible, and it just seemed like that was the truth. So growing up, I saw the difference between the Bible, the truth, and the Mormon religion, and growing up with following a bunch of rules, legalism. So I had these 3 different ways of learning what the difference of having faith was. When I was a teenager, when I went off to college, that's when you really start to discover who you are and what you really believe in. And I would have to definitely say that my faith was tested at that time. And did I believe what I really believed in? Or was it because what everybody was telling me? So that's when I did a lot of searching. And then, I did walk away from God at one point. But then God never stopped pursuing me. And he used a lot of my choices that were not so good in college, but used those choices to bring me back to him. And in that, after I graduated college, I was going to church, I was praying, I was reading my Bible, but somewhere along the way, I became a checkbox Christian. I checked the boxes off. I went to church, check. I prayed, check. I read my Bible, check. But I really didn't know that really wasn't a relationship with God. It's not just checking off a to-do list. It was God really he wanted me. He wanted my heart. And, I can honestly say that I probably wasn't giving him 100% of myself. So as time went by, then I met my husband, Mac, and we were married, and then we started about 4 years later our own family. And God used a lot of things. Sorry about that. God used many things in our life to always keep us close to him. But, again, I was at this time, I would have times where I was close to God, but then it was very back and forth. But I definitely can say that God was my foundation. So we have our first daughter, then we had 9 years ago, and then we had our second son, Blake. But then 5 years ago, we had our third child, Bowen. And when he was born, all of my children, they were born during C-sections. And when he was born, we thought we were adding another healthy child to our family. Well, that was not the case. When we went to the hospital, as soon as he was born, we immediately knew something was wrong. His breathing wasn't right. The doctors immediately took him to the intensive care unit for the babies. And then they did all this testing, and then 24 hours later, we had discovered that he had a fatal kidney genetic disease called polycystic kidney disease. Well, we were devastated. We had no idea because we had two other healthy children at home. Well, we had to make some decisions, and one of the decisions we had to make was, what was the course of plan that we were going to do for him. So of course we, as parents, we wanted to try everything and do everything to keep him with us, to give him a fighting chance. So in the time that he was alive, his kidneys were not compatible with life. They were actually the size of an adult kidneys. His kidneys were the size of 10 centimeters. When you're born, you're only supposed to have kidneys the size of 3 centimeters. So his kidneys were taking up space in his body and not making any room for him to breathe. So 4 days after he was alive, he had to be intubated and kept on machines and ventilators, and he had to have surgeries, and he had a peritoneal dialysis catheter put in. So we were in that hospital making decisions about surgery and blood transfusions, and they were telling us about everything that was going on with him, keeping him alive. And then towards the end, we knew that there was no way that Bowen was going to be able to stay here with us, that it was apparent that he was going to go to heaven. So after 13 days, we had went into the hospital room, and the doctors sat down with us and told us something that no parent should ever have to hear, is that we've done everything that we can. There's nothing else that we can do for you and your son. So it goes beyond comprehension, beyond understanding. So what the doctors did, they asked us, what do you want to do with your son in his last hours of life? And we wanted to hold him. So, as quick as we saw him come into this world, and that is as quick as he left this world, as when we took him off the ventilator and we held him in our arms for the very last time. Now, you can only imagine how devastating that is to a person, to a family. You can only imagine the world of grief that we felt and lived every day. It was a nightmare. It was a nightmare that you just felt like that you would not ever wake up from. So as we were going through this journey and trying to find ways to heal, you can only imagine all the ways that we tried to heal, and men and women heal so differently. I probably felt very paralyzed by the pain. I would not even leave my house at times. And, I tried avoiding and staying busy and running and just anything to not deal with my pain. But, God has other plans. And so I had went back to work after 4 months of my son passing away. And it was hard. It was hard because everybody knew that I was pregnant and there was no baby to ask for. How's the baby doing? So, and I worked in the hospital, so I also worked with pregnant women and babies, so that was also very hard. So I had asked them not to let me go near that floor because it was just a little bit too painful for me. But I knew I had to get back into life. I knew I had to start living again. So, like I said, God has other plans. So even though I was trying to avoid and be like, no, I'm not ready for that. No, I can't do that. God had orchestrated everything behind the scenes. And he had, one night, I was at work. There was a trauma that came in. And it was a pregnant woman. And they had told me that I had to go in and do that trauma. And I said, there is no way I'm going in there. I cannot do it. And I literally just broke down in tears, crying, saying, I can't. And in that moment, it was so amazing because I did not know how much I was avoiding and running and hiding. I did not really realize it. until God had kept pushing me into a corner after corner after corner. He would push me one way, and I would like, nope, I'm going this way. And God would push me in another way, and I said, nope, I'm going this way. Well, that night, God made me realize there's always going to be a pregnant person. There's always going to be a baby. And what are you going to choose to do? Run and hide every time? Or are you going to choose to face your fear and let me walk you through it? Well, God had spoken to me big time that night, and he says, hey, I got this. I have you. I will help you get through this if you let me. So it was hard, and it was really painful. But that night is when I truly 100% surrendered everything to God. And it was in that 100% surrender that God was able to do something bigger and better with my pain and with my grief and with all the devastation that I was feeling and going through. And it wasn't until I did that I was able to start healing. Now, it wasn't easy, and it still isn't sometimes, but what I was doing was never going to provide healing and growth and victory the way God could do it. So what you're seeing on that cover, growth, that's very much a season of life that we go through is growth. And I very much wanted that, and I didn't know how to do that. And these are the steps that God showed me. These steps in the victorious life, the be still, the be thankful, the be kind and loving. These are the things that God showed me in my darkness, in my pit of despair, of when everywhere I looked, I saw defeat. And I did not know how to get out. And only God could show me these things and get me out of that pit, to show me how he can turn things into something so much better. And it wasn't meant for me to know how. It wasn't meant for me to know the details how God was going to do it. I just had to trust him. And I just had to let him. And I had to give him everything I had. I had to empty my heart and give him everything. And it was in that moment that I learned what God can do when I give him all of my heart. Not just being a checkbox Christian, not just following a bunch of rules, not just going through the motions, running, avoiding, hiding. It was about allowing God to walk with me in victory, because he's already won and conquered the grave. God has already sent Jesus, who has suffered for us and went through all of this. And he didn't go through that for nothing, for us to all be left here in defeat. And that's what God was showing me in this journey. Hey, I've made a way for you. I've made a way for you to be victorious. And you don't have to live this way. You don't have to be defeated. And I want to tell you, the defeated one is not you, it's Satan. Because nothing he can do can ever change what God has done. And that's what was so amazing about the whole thing, that I would never be able to be here speaking these words to you, writing this study, if God wasn't able to completely 100% transform my heart with his words, with his ways, with his desires, with his truth. There's no way I would be able to be sitting here speaking these words. Now, this study, I pray that this study will do the same thing that it has done in my life, for your life, because the victory is so sweet. I mean, even when we are in climbing up the mountains, even when we are in our struggles, in our storms, there is victory, there is joy, there's exuberant joy to be had. And God desires for all of us to have it, to live in his abundance of everything he has to offer. I'm sorry, my computer keeps turning off. So when we are doing this study, the way to be able to complete the study is prayer. And we are going to be praying every week. I'm going to be sending prayer requests. I'm going to be praying for each and every one of you when you send me a prayer request. And there's those 5 prayers in the back of the study that we'll be praying over the study, so we can just stay committed, stay faithful to doing this study, because I promise you, when you use God's words and his truth to be the one to mend your heart, to put together your brokenness, to make you wholehearted again, it's true healing. It's true, 100% victory. And it's nothing but victory when you allow Jesus to walk with you through this, to be able to live out the beautiful message of the gospel. So I just want to leave you with this. There is victory in defeat, because Satan's defeated one and he can't change what God has already done. His bigger plan is at hand. And I promise that whatever struggle that you are going through right now, that God's going to use it for something better and bigger. And even though we don't see it, we don't have to know. We just have to trust. So I hope and pray that you have a great week of being still and just focusing on God's truth for you, because that is where it all started for me. Just when I sat and I was just still with God. Man, sometimes it's a little bit too much, because I'm like, okay, God, it's a little bit too much. But he, that saying, God doesn't give you anything you can handle. Well, I believe that it's not that he doesn't give us too much more than we can handle. It's that we can't handle it without him. And I sure can't. And every day I need to be reminded. So I'm just so thankful that you all are here. I'm so excited to start this study and to discuss the Be Still homework next week. I promise I'm going to get this all situated and figure out the technical difficulties, and I apologize. So congratulations to Jessica for winning the mustard seed. I'm going to have other opportunities to be able to win some other stuff too during the study. But I'm trying to see what else. But if you haven't already, go ahead and put your name under the roll call and introduce yourself. So scroll down to where the megaphone is and just say a couple words about yourself if you haven't already done that. But all right, well, you guys have a wonderful, blessed week, and know that I am praying for you and that you are loved and you are victorious. See you then next week. Bye.